Hello and welcome to Comic Cuts, the panel show. I'm Kev F, the guy who's worked for the Beano and Marvel and now Shakespeare works for me. My two guests today are a Perrier Award-nominated comedian, author and kids TV head writer, who you might recognise alongside his animated little friend, and an American stand-up who you will recognise from BBC's Live at the Apollo. Would you please welcome Howard Reed and Spring Day?
Hello.
Hi.
Comic Cuts. We're looking at a panel, and we comprise a panel. There's a few of us. So the panel sees a panel, and we talk about the comics from the panel we discuss, and we call it Comic Cuts.
And welcome to your favourite podcast about comics. Don't worry if you don't know or care anything about comics. Half the time, neither do my guests, and it doesn't hurt. My two guests have brought with them a panel from a comic or something close, and we're going to see if we can identify it and talk about it. Maybe we'll learn something about comics and our guests. Or maybe we'll just show off a bit and have a fun chat. Let's see. Hello, Spring. Hello, Howard.
Hello, Kev. Thanks for having us.
Well, I've discovered something which I didn't know you both had in common. Howard, I knew you'd worked on Horrible Histories. Spring, I didn't know you had.
I have, yeah, a couple times, yeah. It's really fun.
Were
Me
you
and
both
Howard have been in the same room a few
Yeah,
times.
Yeah,
So
no, we
you-
have been, yeah. And
the
on
same-
Horrible Science as well, I think, Spring?
Yeah, horrible science as well. Yeah.
So does it work with an American writer's room type vibe?
I've never been in an American writer's room. But it's certainly Horrible Histories and Horrible Science had a similar vibe.
Yeah, it is sort of competitive pitching. You sort of go in. It's sort of one of the most competitive sketch shows. I mean, I don't know. I've not written on many other sketch shows other than Radio 4, but which I suppose are similar sort of those early sketch shows, like things like Weekending and things like that. It is you go to the meeting, you talk about what's going on, you have a history or a science expert tell you stuff, and your job is to pitch a load of ideas as to how you can make those things funny. Sometimes the things are funny themselves, especially in Horrible Histories. I don't know if you found the same, Spring, but science, it's quite hard to make photosynthesis hilarious in itself. You have to do a sketch adjacent to it, photosynthesis, and slip in facts. But yeah,
Is it like, I mean, were you guys performing and writing or just writing for other performers?
Well, I'm not an actor in the show.
Right.
Are you talking about? Yeah, no. So we were just, pitching sketches and writing sketches that would be.
Yeah,
Like
most
for-
of the writing is done by writers, just who write. I mean, I'm a performer as well, but I've done a couple of cameos in the show. But and there's a few, like Jess Ransom, who's one of the longest running performers and writers in it, does both and is fantastic. And there's a few, quite often that you get a sort of a royal visit from one of the cast members, and they come and sit in and pitch a couple of things. But most of the writing is done by writers, and the performing is done by and which is great because the performers are so. If you get to go on set on Horrible Histories or Horrible Science, the amount of stuff they get through and with the quality that they deliver is amazing.
How different is
film.
it? Because you guys are both writer performers, and so you would primarily, originally, I assume, have written for yourself in your own voice. I mean, Spring, how different is it to be doing this writing for the others, or do you even have to do team writing, collaborative writing?
Well, I mean, I wrote along with Tim Ranko, my husband, so we're both in there together. And I think it's quite fortunate we're both quite juvenile. And when we go in for the day to listen to the expert talk about history or science, basically you get to be the annoying kid in class asking stupid questions and taking the conversation in a different, weird way, and basically being the worst student that expert has ever had.
And how
just
was
trying to make it fun.
how was your knowledge of science?
Oh, it's terrible, but I think having a terrible knowledge of science actually helps.
Yeah.
Because you're like, oh, well, how do I make this make sense for me in a way that I could understand it? And me and a 12 and 13-year-old, not all that different.
I think
Yeah, if we as adults can't, there was a few concepts in one of the early Horrible Science things. I don't know if you were there, Spring, but
Yeah.
there was there's a physics thing that when you lean against a wall, it leans back on you with the equal force, and it's like it doesn't. And that conversation went on for like almost an hour of just like what do you mean? And I think what it meant was if you have to lean against a wall with the same force that it's leaning that is structurally within it before it will fall over. But the way it's described to kids is that the wall is intentionally pushing back on you. And it's like that's not true. I don't know if that ever made it into a sketch, but yeah, it is. And I think you're totally right, Spring. It's that it's science and history filtered through an idiot or
I
several idiots
I
who are
feel like
making
it's
jokes.
I feel like there's a greater chance of having a knowledge of history just because if you hang around and walk around, especially in Britain, you're surrounded by history and you can't help picking it up. But science is impenetrable. It is beyond a wall of, especially physics. You can't see it. I would struggle.
And there's things in particularly physics and the high end of physics. I'm developing a show with which CERN are involved with um, uh, for younger kids even. But the thing is, the way they explain physics, and there are some bits of physics that you don't get explained. They explain the opposite almost to you. They explain a sort of entry level version of it to smaller kids, and then when you get to A level, or oh yeah, no, that's not true. We just say that so your head doesn't explode, and trying to get that across. That level of complexity because there's most of it. Sometimes I'm reading a book on, trying to read a book on particle physics. Is like, and that basically the experts say if you haven't got a headache, you're not even close to understanding it, or if you think you understand it, you don't understand it because it's ununderstandable, a lot of it, which is quite hard to get across to a 8-year-old.
Is horrible science something they're continuing with? Because the big worry now is that telly is doing less of a lot of stuff. It's doing a less of kids programs. And Spring, you made it onto Live at the Apollo just in time for Live at the Apollo to get cancelled.
I know. It's kind of a weight off. Now I can stop talking about it.
Well, no, you can't stop talking about it because we want to know how did you get that gig? I know it's too late for us, but how did that gig come about?
I was told I was in the running fairly early on, and I wasn't doing Edinburgh that year. And I thought that they were just saying it to be nice because lots of people say nice things to you all the time in this business. And I said, "Oh, that's nice." And they're like, "We're coming to see you." And they saw me perform a set at Angel Comedy Club, and we had a nice conversation after. And I talked to my agent about it. She said, "It might be this year, it might be in 5 years, who knows?" And then they called and said, "We would like you to be on." And I was like, "Okay." And then that's when I started to wet the bed.
Because I guess we do the Edinburgh Fringe and have done for a long time because of the dangled carrots. The
Yeah.
Live at the Apollo was a big one. Taskmaster is another big one. Are there fewer such enticements now?
Well, I think there's different ways of doing it now. I think lots of people do it via social media and podcasts and things like that. There's lots of other ways of getting seen, and I think the Edinburgh Festival's bigger than ever ticket wise, but it's possibly way less efficient as a way of spending your money to advance your career. I think possibly partly because it's so expensive now. It's even more insanely expensive than it was.
It has always been a gamble, although Spring, it's a gamble you're taking again this year, 2026.
But I'm doing free fringe. I think you have a much better chance of making your money back and maybe even a little bit of a profit that way. But I did notice the last time I was there that a lot of people that had large social media followings, but maybe not quite the live performing chops that they wanted to have, they were using it as a way to learn how to do that in front of an audience that already liked them and bought tickets to see them. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I think it's just a different strategy.
Hmm.
I think Amanda Knox might be good in a few years. Who knows? But
Amanda Knox, listener, if you've not been part of the Edinburgh bubble, Amanda Knox, you will remember from a murder trial when she was ultimately, I think, acquitted. I really can't remember the story, but she has been the big talk of Edinburgh because everyone's talking about her show, regardless of its content, I think.
well, I think it's a testament to the storytelling of marketing.
Yeah.
And I think that it's a fantastic PR stunt. I'm not going to say I wish I'd thought of that. But yeah, I think from a marketing perspective, it's fascinating, and we'll see if she pursues comedy and for any long-term sort of way. But yeah.
Well, I have with me two comics, and they're going to talk about comics. And it always begs the question, why do these two subjects have the same damn name? I've asked everyone on the panel to bring a panel to the panel. You'll be able to see these images on the show page and on the artwork for the podcast episode. And if you're watching on YouTube, well, just look, it's there. But don't worry if you can't see the images, because we're going to be describing them to each other. Now, it's fair to say, from the images you've brought in, one is easier than another. We're going to start by having a look at the panel that Spring has brought in. Spring brought in two. We're going to have a look at this one first. Can we all see that?
Yeah.
Okay, listener at home, don't worry, because Spring Day is not going to describe it. She brought it in. Howard Reed is now going to try and describe, before you identify what it is, if you think you already know, can you identify, for someone who can't see this picture, what are we looking at?
We are looking at a field, and there's what looks like a flying saucer, and some aliens are coming down, looking about with sort of big googly eyes and waving. And the person they're meeting is a goat, and the shape of the alien's body is of a bum. So yes, it's basically butt-shaped aliens meeting a goat.
That I could not describe it better. For the technical people who need a description, the panelologists, I can tell you it's ink and line drawing, filled in with letretone. Whether the letretone was cut with a scalpel or applied by some mechanical method, I can't tell. But I can tell you that this cartoon is most likely from the 1980s or possibly the 1990s, because that's when this cartoon ran. I know what it is instantly. But Howard, would you like to tell us what it is?
You almost got a double whammy on this one, because I'm a massive fan of this. It's Gary Larson, Far Side.
Gary Larson's The Far Side is just inimitable. I say it's inimitable, but lots of people have actually tried imitating, haven't they? Spring, tell us about your love of The Far Side, I assume?
I grew up on the Far Side. It was all over our house. Partially because the publishing house at the time was based in my hometown, Kansas City. So you couldn't really go anywhere in Kansas City without seeing something Gary Larson like. But just huge in my home. Massive influence on my sense of humor and sense of what success looks like. And I love everything about Gary Larson. I like how he handled his success. I like how he just does what he wants. And there's a really great interview that was done in the 80s, and they interview his parents, and they're like, well, we never really thought he was that funny.
Now that's interesting. You talk about the fame and the well-knownness. I don't think I've seen a Gary Larson interview, and certainly at the time, these cartoons came over because they came over from the States, and they would be syndicated. I don't know what UK paper had them, but I never saw them until they were collected up in books, and then they were made into calendars, and then they were a big deal. They were all over all publishing, and then they weren't, because I guess he retired. Is that right?
He did. He retired for a time because one of the reasons he got his really dark sense of humor was his brother, who, when he was sent to the basement to get something, his brother would lock him in and start shouting through the door, "It's coming for you. It's coming for you." And doing stuff like that, their entire childhood really darkened his sense of humor. And I think around the time he retired, his brother had passed away, and he said he just didn't feel that funny. And he'd been doing it for decades by this point anyway. But I think he's come back at the beginning of the pandemic and started doing digital cartoons. He said, "Oh, this is fun." So once in a while, he'll come out with a new thing.
There was some really lovely animation of some of them a while ago. There was a sort of sketch show, I think, that was on the BBC, which was just lovely and properly caught the beauty of it. And it was lovely. Yeah, it was one of my favorite things.
I remembered seeing that animation and thinking that it didn't capture it. I've always had this problem with one medium moving into another, and especially something like the spot cartoon. It's a bit like the gags. When people try and take stand-up comedy and turn it into a sketch show, I'm remembering Frankie Boyle's Tramadol Nights, but there have been other atrocious examples. It loses whatever the original magic was. But you thought, Howard, that
I think it got close to it. I don't think it like, because I love the hit rate of Larson is amazing. The the fact that there's such a complex joke in most of them in one panel is so beautiful. It definitely affected my stand-up. Like my favorite jokes that I've ever written are literally one or two sentences that create a picture in your head, and I think that's why I'm a very visual writer. And yeah, so you very nearly got a double Larsen this time, by the way, because yeah, as I say, I've got I've never shown you the wrong book there. I've got a yeah, all yeah, yeah, I've got a whole collection.
If I
I love
reached
Dublin.
onto the shelves behind me and a couple outside, I've got the same. I've got these wonderful collections. I tell you what, Double Bubble, uh, we have a second example that Spring also shared. Go on, Howard. Go and describe that.
Okay, so it's it's a roadside a hotel. The sign says Roach Hotel, and there's a vacancy sign on. There's a car pulling into the drive, which is full of cockroaches, and the caption says, "Dad, find out if they have cable."
I mean, the beauty of these is that the humor exists in your mind, and you make the connections that make you laugh while you're watching it in silence. And that is the beauty. And yes, you're quite right about the hit rate, because I sat outside in the garden this summer looking through a book of Gary Larson's, and you'd go through one and smile. You go through one, and occasionally you get that 1 in 10, which you're not entirely sure you've understood. And then you get the one
Yeah,
that literally makes you laugh out loud.
yeah, it's so great.
And I also like how sometimes when you don't get it, like the really famous one is cow tools. No one really got that one.
Is
Um,
is it? He's got a tool belt on, a cow with a tool belt on.
no, it's a cow standing in front of a bunch of jacked up, like weird looking tools, like as if cows had designed them themselves, but no one really got it, and he got a lot of hate mail for that.
Oh,
But it also sort of catapulted his fame a little bit. And I sort of like I don't know, because I was introduced to Gary Larson so little that I was quite, well, it's like, oh, I couldn't wait to be old enough to understand it.
Haha.
yeah.
And so it's like, so it's kind of baffling to me that when people don't get something, they're like, well, I don't get it. This needs to cater to my taste. It's like, maybe you just need to grow up a little.
I'm remembering there's a line in an episode of Cheers that I saw recently where Woody is looking at the Gary Larson Far Side cartoon and he's saying, I don't get it. And then one of the others really laboriously explains the gag to it. And Woody says, no, in my local paper, we don't get the Far Side cartoon. It worked on their levels.
Yeah, lovely.
Yeah.
And cartoons, at one point, like you said, it was a way of getting rich. As the syndicated cartoons in the newspapers were the biggest thing, and people have Hollywood mansions from being Charles M. Schultz and for being the creators of Little Abner. I don't think that exists anymore, does it?
I have not heard of Little Abner, I don't think.
Little Abner, oh, well, that was 100 years ago. But
Okay.
Little Abner started in the 1920s or 30s, ran through the 40s, 50s, 60s, the heyday of the American newspaper, when you would have the pullouts. Did you have the pullout section in your American papers, Spring? Because
Yeah.
we've not mentioned this, listener, but Spring's American.
Yes, yes. Yeah.
Funny
But I've
pages.
I've spent most of my adult life outside of it, so technically I'm from the 90s. Um,
But
but
did you have that newspaper which was a thing that didn't happen in the UK, where a kid would go by on a bike and would fling a newspaper
yeah,
onto the lawn, and you had to go get it?
yeah, we have that. We have that. The comics were usually just in the Sunday paper.
Right.
My grandparents always called it the funnies.
Yeah.
You can read the funnies. And it was, Peanuts usually, Blondie, and oh, uh, Tim's gonna be very angry. I can't remember this one just now. But yeah, just all in color and that kind of thing.
Some
Kathy, did you guys
some
have Kathy?
No, I don't know, Kathy. Somewhere back on this shelf, but I won't bore us by getting it out now. I have Sunday sections, basically from when we've gone to America on holiday, and so we
Mhm.
would keep the Sunday sections from the local papers, and they were amazing. There'd be 4 pages, usually 4 tabloid pages. I think I've got a 4 page broadsheet from one holiday, and four.
Boondocks. Sorry,
What was the one?
Boondocks.
Oh yeah.
Boondocks.
It's brilliant. So good.
This is the
Um,
strange thing that we were deprived of so many of these. And apart from the ones that made a crossover, like Peanuts, in my case, I read BC by Johnny Hart and The
mhm.
Wizard of Id by Brant Parker and Johnny Hart. And we got a few others, but most we didn't.
Oh, well, that checks. Different countries have different stuff. Um, but we didn't get very many British cartoons as far as I can remember.
I'm not aware of any British cartoons that crossed over. Also, the comedy. This is a strange thing, which doesn't happen in every area. The comedy won out over the drama strips, didn't it? Once upon a time, and I'm aware of this from my history of comics books, there was Prince Valiant, there was Flash Gordon, there was Dick Tracy, who survived a long time. But those early adventure ships strips like Buck Rogers and Tarzan, by the time you get to the 80s and 90s, those are not playing such a big part. But the funny strips are. You're getting more and more of those, I think. Am I right?
Yeah, but I think also Peanuts was one of those weird ones where it wasn't always funny. It was just kind of melancholy most of the
Mm.
time. So I think it kind of did, both jobs in a way. Um, but I do remember Dick Tracy being around, and I just remember those being a lot denser, and you had to go, ooh, I want to read, you know, and it wasn't, um, yeah, I don't know. It wasn't, it looked more mature for a kid.
Well, I guess the standalone nature of the funny thing, you make them laugh in 3 or 4 panels, or on Sunday you make them laugh in 9 panels. But with the Dick Tracys and the Prince Valiants, you would need to keep reading the thing and collecting them and cutting them out, which I did. I collected one, which was in my parents' newspaper, the Daily Express. It was called Jeff Hawke by Sid Jordan. And we found recently a scrapbook of me cutting out these daily strips. Of course, I never got quite the beginning of the story. I never got quite the end of the story, but I got a lot of middle.
Yeah,
Best bit,
yeah, go ahead.
the best bit. Sorry, of the middle. Sorry, carry on, Spring.
No, I was just gonna say, like, I reading those strips as a kid, you're like, I'm missing out on something, and I also feel like I have to be old enough to enjoy coffee to enjoy this. That's how I felt reading Dick Tracy as a kid.
And I think that's what a lot of us felt with Gary Larson and The Far Side.
And also, I'm dyslexic, so if it's a big panel, loads of words, I immediately sort of recoil. Whereas the Far Side, if like some of them don't have, like the first one didn't have any words at all. It's brilliant, perfect for me because it's just all the humor is visual.
Well, you're giving us a perfect segue to the panel that Howard has brought in, because this is the one that I have found more difficult than any that's been brought into this show for a while. Can you see what we're looking at there, everybody?
Yeah.
Okay, spring. Listener at home, you'll find this in all the usual places. It'll look quite big on the holding image because, well, it's quite a big, bold, single image. Spring, describe what we're looking at.
Ooh, okay. So it's a black and beige image of a potted plant, maybe in the corner of an office-ish. And the plant's stem is kind of wonky, and the leaves are, I would say, um, hair-like, and it's flamboyant. I don't know.
I would say it's a pen and ink line drawing of, do we call those spider plants? Is that what
There
that
you go.
plant is
It
called?
looks like it. I'm redoing my office at the moment. There was one behind me, yeah,
Ah,
but there isn't anymore.
yeah,
But
so spider
yeah.
plant, we got one downstairs in the bathroom, and it is in a terracotta or plastic pot, which is in a saucer. It's got a black line behind it, which looks like a kind of skirting board, or it could be the edge of a table. And for the life of me, I cannot imagine where this is from. It looks like traditional line drawing. It looks pre-digital. I'm going to guess that this dates from pre-digital days, and it could be from the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. You described the beige paper spring. Yeah, it's newsprint paper, old school. Okay, I'll tell you what it looks like a bit to me. It won't turn out to be this, but it looks a bit like Willie Rushton, who used to do illustrations in Private Eye. He was the first illustrator in Private Eye. He did the original masthead and all the original cartoons, and he drew like this. Willie Rushton drew with an ink pen like this, and then he would fill in with letter tone, which is what everybody did in the 60s and onwards. Uh, but what the hell this could be from, I cannot begin to imagine. So my stab in the dark is a Private Eye cartoon. I'm sure I'm wrong. Spring, would you like to have a guess at what on earth this could be from?
Shall I
I'm
flag
sure
up?
it's from a newspaper.
I have been intentionally mean and found that one of the only panels that won't immediately identify what this is. So yeah. It's well, yeah. Sorry, Karen Spring.
No, I was stumped by the plant. So, I will say with confidence, it is from a newspaper.
But more than that, you wouldn't like to guess? I mean, okay.
No.
Am I guessing then that if we pull back and reveal the rest of another picture, is this cropped in from the rest of a picture, or is this a standalone panel that's followed by another panel that gives it away?
So it's in the middle of a story, and literally there was another panel from the story that was thinking wouldn't give it away too much. Would you like me to show you the page?
Yeah, I'm not sure how. I'll
don't
stop.
know.
Hold it up to the screen.
So it's this panel.
Wow.
It is Calvin and Hobbes, and literally, I was looking through it. I was looking through a Calvin and Hobbes book and trying to find. So it's a story of the first panel is Hobbes is Calvin's stuffed tiger who comes to life when Calvin's there. If you're not familiar with the Hobbes is looking at his watch. It goes bebop. He zooms off. There's a beautiful sight gag where he zooms off and the stripes on his tiger skin stay there. He's looking at the window. He's hiding around a corner. He's hiding behind a plant, which is the panel I sent. There's a panel with him looking out from behind the plant, and then he zooms off, hides under it, and basically it's a sort of a Cato in the Pink Panther. Basically, the panel is about him attacking Calvin when he comes in from school, and I love Calvin and Hobbes, and if anybody knows my work, I'm clearly very influenced by Calvin and Hobbes. Yes, but literally, I wanted to do I wanted something that was hard to guess just to be fun, and literally you go through a Calvin and Hobbes book, and either the word Calvin or Hobbes is in everything, or there's very clear. It's so distinctive. So I tried to find the least distinctive.
You did good.
But
that is a wonderful, wonderful selection. Calvin and Hobbes is another one which this summer, because it's been such lovely weather, there's been the opportunity to sit outside and read a book when you would sometimes go inside and do something like watch TV or whatever, or do work, which you can't do outside because you can't see the screen. I read Calvin and Hobbes' book. I may have read that very page. Such a great choice. Spring, were you? Yes, I've got that very book. Calvin, Spring, were you a Calvin and Hobbes lover?
Oh, we have the entire collection. we have, and it's so funny because if I hadn't chosen Farsight, I would have chosen Calvin and Hobbes.
Likewise, yeah, the other way around. Yeah.
So, huge fan. There was recently a documentary about Watterson. Is it Watterson or Waterton?
Watterson. I'm checking. What big fan? Watterson, two T's.
He's got two T's, but I think it's pronounced Watterson. Well, there's two documentaries I've got to check out. I've got to see Gary Larson, so I can picture Gary Larson, and I've got to see Bill Watterson. Two guys united by the fact that they both retired.
Yeah. I was going to say they're very similar stories. Both of them just hung up their clogs. And that's it. I'm done. I'm checked out. And didn't Watterson? He also talked about coming back recently. I think possibly during the pandemic.
He did do a book with someone. It's quite gothic. I bought it for Tim one Christmas. Where he just did the pictures and not the story. But it's quite a departure from Calvin and Hobbes. But I think he just enjoyed the challenge of doing something kind of different.
Yeah.
But I love his focus on the artistry, and there's this really beautiful story, and you've probably heard it or whatever, but he went to some there was some story about a cartoonist. I don't know who it is. You guys know much more than I do, but he was honored at some lunch or something, and he told them all, talking about cartoons, that, I introduced you to a lovely lady and you turned her into a whore or something like that. Like, it's just this whole, like, he didn't like where the business had gone and needed to get to his, the art of it and all that kind of stuff. So I just, is quite it seemed to stand out in his life and career and memory and
I mean,
work.
you can see that in his work. The thing about strips like The Far Side and Calvin and Hobbes is that they respect the reader so much. They don't punch down, and intellectually, they don't aim low. They aim high. They're philosophically rich. They're draftsmanship wise incredibly strong, especially in Woodston's case. And yeah, you could see how his values are there all the way through. He's not going to lower them, is he?
No.
Yeah, I mean, it's named after two philosophers, like Calvin and Hobbes. Like that can't be a mistake. That can't. And it's so philosophical. It's so brilliant. I loved it as a kid because he's such a just such a brilliant kid character. Just Hobbes is a brilliant character. The sort of magicalness of it, the childlikeness of it, and when he's not there, and Hobbes just turns. When anyone else is there, Hobbes just turns into a stuffed toy, which is just heartbreaking. But also, then as a parent, you read it again and you see, yeah, it's brilliant. It's about being a child. It's about being a parent. It's about having an imagination. It's about philosophy. It's about, yeah, it's so lovely.
And the colors and there's so much action going on that you're almost kind of breathless by the end of some of these strips because there's so much going on. And I don't know about you, but I'm quite sensitive to a lot of comics. Like a lot of Japanese manga and
Mhm.
stuff makes me quite motion sick for some
Right.
reason. But I don't have any of those issues with Calvin and Hobbes and stuff, even with, and Calvin's pretty much a tornado.
Yeah.
I see a lot of Calvin and Hobbes in Toy Story.
Mm,
And it's not perhaps a coincidence that one finished before the other one started, because you get not only the kid whose toy comes to life, but also the imaginary world. Buzz Lightyear's world is a bit like those worlds that Calvin imagines when he is imagining. You'll get the story. He's a fighter pilot, and it's a realistically drawn strip of a fighter pilot in a plane, and then it crashes, and then you pull back and reveal the actual dream. It's been the world that the kid and the tiger have been enacting.
That was I was looking through it and literally trying to find a single panel that didn't give away immediately that it was Watson, and one of them was the first panel is of a fighter jet, and it's quite who was the pop artist who
Roy Lichtenstein.
like Rick Lichtenstein. It sort of he's definitely leaning into that, and he's such a beautiful artist. And the way I'm just looking at one where there's a and I've definitely stolen this plot on various cartoons that I've written. It basically Calvin starts defying gravity and starts floating up into the air, and basically he draws every stage of going through the clouds, going through the space. Like yeah, the imagination is amazing, and the drawing is just so beautiful.
And I assume, and I think I may have heard something about this, he has resisted temptations for it to be adapted because people must at some point have been clamoring to animate this.
well, he won't
Yeah.
even do merchandise at all,
Mm,
which is remarkable.
yeah.
So much so I'm surprised someone hasn't like assassinated him just so they can start
Well,
making money off of Calvin and Hobbes.
people have ripped him off because there's the pissing Calvin, isn't there? You know that
Yeah.
image,
Oh yeah.
which was done just as a bootleg, just as someone just lifted a Calvin drawing and then did it. It was a sports thing. It was pissing on
Yeah.
one team, and then it's become a meme and it's become the regular thing that people do. And I think the syndicate maybe tried to do something about it, but you can't. It's whack-a-mole.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. But by and large, not having dolls or calendars and that kind of thing, it's remarkable that that hasn't happened.
And
Yeah.
even just a Hobbes, like a Hobbes in an inanimate Hobbes would, yeah, I'd be like, I
Mhm.
might make one. I might learn how to sew and make one so I can have a.
Well, I wonder if he comes from a generation who thought differently from subsequent generations, because I remember Lee and Herring used to joke about this a lot, about doing adverts in that kind of Neil Young way. Neil Young used to say it, and the American not Dennis Leary, the other, Bill Hicks, used to have these things about, you're sucking the devil's dick if you do advertising, if you commercialize yourself in any way. And I think subsequent generations past the end of the 90s don't think like that. But Bill Waterson is of that generation.
But I guess from what you were saying earlier, the syndication used to be big bucks, and I guess it isn't anymore. And so I guess these days you can't make a. I mean, can you make a living off just doing comics? Like it's hard enough to make a living off being a stand-up or being a writer. Like it's the money's been stripped away from everything. So you've kind of got to sell every which way you can. Yeah.
Yeah, I imagine, like, because I was told the only way you can really make a living as a writer is through like romance novels and writing 2 a year and building up a relationship with your following to the point where you're like taking them on tours of places that inspired you and stuff like that. So it's almost like starting your own little cult.
Yeah.
and that kind of thing. So I guess if you want to do that with your cartoons, I suppose that's possible. But yeah,
it does seem that authenticity is craved for, and I wonder if people like Bill Watterson and Gary Larson would be able to stay so far behind the scenes that I can't even picture their faces. Is there any creator who can be that now, or do we all have to be Richard Osman, out there every day, and also books in the background?
Well,
yeah.
yeah.
I mean, I guess Banksy just came into mind, who isn't a traditional cartoonist, but he is like his panels, which are on the wall of just appear. The images are beautiful and evocative and funny. I don't know where his money comes from, but I guess from selling a wall.
He comes from selling his works. Banksy's
yeah.
works sell for an awful lot, and they sell direct from the author for an awful lot. Yeah, he's not struggling. He's okay. Good example.
Yeah, I don't think he was struggling before either. He doesn't strike me as someone who was struggling before.
But I guess also with both of them, because I can't think of much sort of merch from Larson, but I mean.
He was calendars. He was calendars.
Yeah,
he was postcards. Yeah, he was. I'm pretty sure if T-shirts were a thing, and they weren't as big a thing as they were, but yeah, I'm pretty sure his stuff was on everything.
But it's the because he's one panel, you can do that, and you can be totally true to what you're doing. You're just you're like Banksy. You're sticking your art on different mediums, but which is harder to do if you've got 12 panels in your thing. It doesn't make as good a T-shirt. So yeah.
I have to say, I have seen people cosplaying Calvin and Hobbes.
Brilliant.
That's nice. And of course, Gary Larson is immortalized with the Thagomizer.
Yes.
You're aware of the Thagomizer?
I am. I thought it was super cute, and he's been named after, I think, 3 or 4 insects have been named after him.
For the benefit of the listeners who don't know, Spring, tell us about the Thagomizer.
Oh, well, I don't know that much. I do know that the Thagomizer, it was like some spike-shaped things on the tail of some dinosaurs. And he had a strip where it was a caveman explaining that this was named after Thag Simmons or something, the late Thag Simmons or something. Yeah, so he'd been killed by them. And so some scientists actually used the name that he created to name that because it hadn't had a name yet. Does that make sense?
That is exactly right. I was discussing.
I was imagining a ray gun that turned you into a caveman. That's what
no! I was discussing this with a group of kids in one of the classes that I was doing this summer, and I said about the Thagomizer, and the kid corrected me because I said it was a thing sticking out of the tail of a Stegosaurus, and the kid corrected me with the name of the correct dinosaur, which now has a Thagomizer on its tail, and until about 30 years ago, just had an unnamed spike coming out of its tail. But that's a way to be remembered.
Yeah, especially for a guy like he loves animals so much. I'm surprised he didn't become like a marine biologist or something, or even a vet. Maybe he did, I don't know. But like that must have been so nice to have something like that happen in an area you care so much about.
Yeah. Well, we have been discussing and looking at 2 absolute classics. Despite my initial misgivings, two of the most familiar names you will hear in the comics world. We have been looking at the work of Gary Larson on The Far Side and the work of Bill Watterson on Calvin and Hobbes. Thank you to my two guests. I'd like to find where we will find you online. Spring, where do we find you?
You can find me on Instagram at Spring Catherine Day Comedian, and Spring Day Comedy. I'm doing a podcast with Catherine Mather called Watching EastEnders from the Very Beginning. It's only available on YouTube. And I will be doing the Edinburgh Fringe Festival from the 17th to the 30th, 1:45 p.m. at Bar 50. It's called My Name is Spring Day and Other Stupid Facts, if you're into that.
I hate for you to be disappointed by the fact that this will be going out after that. But time travelers, take note. And Howard,
there you go.
Where do we find you?
I am at Howard Reed, READ, at most things like Instagram and not Twitter. But yeah, Instagram, Howard at Howard Reed. And one of the things I'm doing is I head wrote a show, an animation, which is on Milkshake called Stan and Gran, which is a comedy mystery show about nature. So it's funny and it's got facts about nature. It's for preschoolers, but that's how I spent my last year.
Fantastic. And I'm, of course, at kevfcomicartist.com. Let's hear it again. And thank you so much for my two guests, Spring Day and Howard Reed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Comic Cuts. We're looking at a panel, and we comprise a panel. There's a few of us. So the panel sees a panel, and we talk about the comics from the panel we discuss, and we call it Comic Cuts.